Oh my god. 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 Oh my god.
Bro, you better shut the fuck up. Google try. Google this thing one on to six. Alright. Listen. Toma, 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 toma. Oh. Test one. Bài, toma, 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 bài, toma, ta cha ca cài. Toma, toma, bài, 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 bài. Alright, alright, alright. Cancel. Alright, let's start the test.
You will hear two friends choosing a campsite together for their holiday with their families. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Location, attraction này, local farmer thì bán cái gì đó này, camper thì được phép làm cái con gì cũng được, con mấy giá.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Okay.
Shall we have a look at this information about campsites, and then perhaps we can choose where to go on holiday?
Yes, my children are very excited about our two families going away together again this year. Shall we look at Westerly campsite first?
Yes, it says it's most suitable for children under 12 years old. So that should be fine for us. Your daughter's just 11, isn't she?
Yes, that's right.
Now, where is the Westerly campsite? Is it the one next to a lake?
That's another one. This one's by the sea. Perfect.
Yes, that's a good place to go in the summer when the weather's hot.
This brochure says that most children who go to Westerly campsite love the animals they can see there. There's a special area where they can go and feed them.
We might see some interesting birds too. Oh, and look, it says a farmer comes every day and you can buy eggs from him.
Great for breakfast. I wonder if he sells other things like cheese, but it's not mentioned.
I don't know. I think they grow a lot of fruit in that area, so he might sell that.
Another thing I like about this campsite is that they let you make a fire. We could cook some sausages and sing songs around it in the evenings. And perhaps it would be a good way to meet other families there too.
Great. And it isn't too expensive. £6 per adult per night. £3 per child. But wait, families of 4 can get it for £15.75 a night. That works out even cheaper.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10.
Recommend cho mấy thằng nào mà thích cái gì đó. Camper có thể thuê một thằng nào. Activity được tổ chức cho children.
Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Let's look at a couple of other campsites before we decide.
Yes. Let's look at Snetton Forest campsite. It's even cheaper. £5 per adult, and children under 10 are free. They say it's a very good place if you're keen on fishing. And they even give you tips on where to go to have the best chance of catching some.
I prefer walking or hiking, and so do the rest of my family, so I'm not sure that will attract us that much. Oh, look! It says you can rent a bike to go around the forest. I'd do that. And your children would like that too, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. We could all go somewhere and have a picnic. Look, this is interesting too. At Snetton, they get all the children together to play football.
Oh.
Your children would love that. And your husband, Mike, plays too, doesn't he?
Yes, that sounds good. Well, Mike's more into tennis, actually, but I'm sure he'd be happy to be a referee if they needed one. Here's some information about Trent Valley campsite. I've heard about this one. There's a festival near the campsite in June and it's really busy, so they say for families it's better in July when it's a bit quieter.
Well, that would be just right for us because we have to go in the school summer holidays. Let's look at what it says about it. Oh, look. It's quite a long way to the nearest village. 8 kilometres. It's too far to walk.
But this one has got an open-air pool, which we'd all love in the summer. And they have a little shop where you can buy basic things like bread and milk.
That's really useful. And there's lots to do there. I think on Saturday nights...
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1.
Hả?
Từ một cái file Excel con chuyển nó thành PowerPoint có mất thời gian nhiều không?
Từ Excel chuyển sang PowerPoint.
Hả?
Từ Excel chuyển sang PowerPoint.
Mẹ đang hỏi con ấy, thằng con.
Cái này Excel
Không biết bảo
PowerPoint.
sao. Con em thì làm Excel. Đi ra ngoài mà chơi. Cái đứa nào đi ra ngoài mà chơi.
Nè, cá nè, cá nè.
Ôi, anh có cá ăn kìa.
Cá nè.
Trời ơi, anh có cá ăn đấy. Con thôi đi ra ngoài không, mẹ bế ra ngoài chơi. Ở ngoài chơi tí nhá. Nhá. Ôi, trời ơi, mẹ bế con gái mẹ đi ra ngoài chơi một tí chứ. Nhá. Trời ơi. Ôi trời ơi, đi ra ngoài chơi mà. Đi ra ngoài chơi đi.
Khó hiểu nhỉ?
Section 2. You will hear a radio program about starting a business. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16.
Điều gì tốt nhất về sự tin bản thân được theo Arthur? Thằng Arthur, lại Arthur, advice thằng Arthur để cho cái thằng business leader new gen. Cách mà Arthur đối mặt với difficult problem, common quality of leaders, should company take risk, có nên lấy take risk không? Common quality là phẩm chất.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
What do you
Good evening. My name is Arthur Jones. I'm very glad to have this opportunity to speak to you over the radio. The host asked me to give a talk about my experience of starting my own business. I can't say my business is successful, but there are some things that I want to share with you, which I think will be helpful if you want to start your own company. I've talked to many young people, and they told me that they are afraid of making mistakes when they start their business. What I want to say is that mistakes are very common, especially when you do something new. Mistakes can actually show you where you need to improve, so you can take actions about them and use the chance to learn new methods. This is a very important attitude you should have. Besides, most mistakes are not that fatal. Don't be too anxious when they occur. Next, I want to go on to talk about self-confidence, which is quite important in achieving business success. Being self-confident means that you can have faith in yourself and what you do. Self-confidence can be gained through hard work, even playing sports. However, sometimes self-confidence may make you ignore problems and even cause failure. Business leaders should remain calm and not take impulsive actions. I know that when people start their business, they have confusions. They don't know how they can be more professional. They read business journals or watch related videos, but these don't seem to help sometimes. My suggestion is that instead of aimlessly trying many new things, they should always be committed to their goal. As long as they stick to it, they will not be easily distracted or confused by other things, and they are sure to get better. We will all meet difficulties, especially at the beginning. We can't always rely on ourselves to solve all the problems. I had a problem with marketing earlier this year. Luckily, I found an expert to help me deal with it. So, there's always a way, but we should know how and when to seek help from these people. Business leaders have different kinds of styles. Some are very good at public speaking, others are very down-to-earth and have strong executive skills. But in general, they should be able to win the respect from their employees so that they can carry out their orders more easily. There are times when a company might face risks. During such times, leaders will need to take prompt actions, and they can't always plan for distant future. Leaders should analyze and deal with the risks with caution. If they bear this in mind, there is always a way out. Before you hear the rest of the radio program, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20.
Mẫu quan trọng. Nghe bắt đầu khởi nghiệp. Kiểu giúp đỡ, rất quan trọng.
Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20. At the beginning of my business, I experimented with quite a few strategies, hoping to find out the best solution for my business. Here is what I found. At first, my company wanted to work out prices for the products and make them realistic. However, prices are always changing, so they can't be fixed. Another thing I always keep in mind is that leaders must stay committed to their jobs. Without enough commitment, you may easily give up when problems happen. I have some friends whose businesses didn't survive during difficult times. It wasn't because they were stupid, it was just a lack of commitment. I can't always be sure that my products or services are better than my competitors, but I pay attention to details and try to improve all the little things, as they can actually make a big difference. You might worry that you don't have a very clear and sophisticated business strategy. Personally, I don't think it's a problem, because you will be changing them all the time anyway. In terms of support, at any stage we do need support from others to back up our business. The support can really make a difference. Before I started my business, my family helped me a lot, both financially and mentally. There were also people who gave me advice on how to run businesses successfully. However, these advice and ideas were not so practical to me, so I didn't really use them. Looking back, I felt lucky that I followed my own way of thinking. Also, I was short of funds back then, and I loaned money from the bank to start my company. I was grateful for that. That's what I want to share in today's program. If you have any questions for me, please send it to my email, which is That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute.
Section 3. You will hear a discussion between two students called Mark and Fran about their presentation on some dolphins which are unique to New Zealand. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24 on page 5.
Sanctuary. 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 Thung lũng à? Không phải. New Zealand government. Chính phủ New Zealand.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for coming around.
Hi, Fran. No problem. We need to try and get this presentation finished.
Mark, let's start with the way dolphins make sounds.
Well, we all know that dolphins make clicking noises to communicate.
Yes, they have tongues and larynxes as humans do, but what's really strange about the dolphin is that the sounds are focused through an extraordinary organ called the melon, which most other sea mammals don't have.
So, shall I take over from there and speak about the different dolphin types? I want to share what we found out about those rare dolphins that are special just to New Zealand in particular.
Yeah, great. Put the emphasis on them. The rarest of all is the Hector's dolphin, isn't it? They are endangered, aren't they? I think that's mainly because so many of them get tangled up in fishing gear, especially gill nets, and die. I know that some conservationists are worried about the impact of the tourism industry on dolphin numbers, but I don't think that's a problem yet here. Also, remember that this species has a very long reproductive cycle, so their numbers don't get replenished quickly.
Yeah, that's really sad. But at least the New Zealand government established a sanctuary for them, didn't it? The fishing industry was against it, but I remember reading that the general public were very supportive of the decision. It was a consequence of a study done by some marine biologists. Having a protected breeding area has made a big difference to the dolphin population already.
Yeah, I think their numbers have swelled to over 7,000 in total, with a tiny group of just 89 living down off Southland, nearly 2,000 living near Christchurch on the east coast, and the biggest group surviving off the west coast. It's pretty wild country over there, so I guess there aren't as many tourists and fishermen to disturb them.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30 on page 6.
Coastline. Slow Benita. Solitary. West Coast. Second largest. See mostly Kaikoura.
Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
OK, so how do you suggest I structure my part of the talk?
Well, you could start with the common dolphin, which inhabits the whole of the sea around New Zealand. And once you've covered everything to do with them, feeding and so on, you could go on to the more unusual types. The dusky dolphin is especially interesting because you know how all the dolphins travel in small social groups called pods? Well, the dusky dolphins travel in pods as big as 800 members.
And I think the Duskies like to travel along beside fishing and tourist boats, don't they? Whereas the Hector's dolphins are different in that they prefer to go in the wake of boats, that is, coming along in the rear.
Yeah, they do. But they also dive down deep to avoid fast boats.
Oh, let's not forget the Maui, because they are endangered too, aren't they? There are only 150 of them left, and they inhabit only the western coastal waters off the North Island of New Zealand.
Yeah, it's a pity. They also face problems because of their tiny size. Now, the orca is actually a dolphin too, right?
Yes, surprisingly. So I'll include that in my talk. People call them killer whales, but in fact they're not whales. They're a huge and very fierce type of dolphin. In New Zealand, Kaikoura in the South Island is the best place to spot orcas swimming by, so people mistakenly think that's where they live. But actually, orcas cover vast distances.
Let's not forget to mention the bottlenose. It's bigger than nearly all the other dolphins, even the common dolphin.
Oh, but still not as big as the orca, right?
That's right. Well, I think that's our presentation done now.
That is the end of Part 4. You will hear a man giving a lecture on his tyre recycling company to environmental science students. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Previous failed smoke from burning, the company didn't make any profit. Lợi thế của molecular process không giới hạn này, tốt hơn cho kinh tế này, ít bảo trì hơn này. Trong tương lai này sẽ 10 more factory review spend in coming year on charity. Chắc thế.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon. I'm the Managing Director of Molectra Technologies, and we're involved in recycling tyres from vehicles such as cars and trucks. This might not sound new or exciting, but the method we use is quite radical compared to traditional tyre recycling methods. We strongly believe that the business of recycling tyres is crucial, as amazingly, every month in Australia alone, the number of old tyres that are discarded exceeds 1.5 million. And when you look at the figure globally, it is a staggering 1.2 billion each year. For decades, various recycling methods have been trialled with varying degrees of success. In some cases, the solution was as bad as the problem. Incinerating tyres, for example, generates toxic fumes which are harmful to the environment. Breaking up whole tyres is energy intensive and produces a contaminated product with very little value. As a result, there was little incentive to get into the business because there was no profit in it. And yet, a tyre is made up of so many valuable components. And it is for this reason that we started trying out new recycling methods. In the end, our factory came up with a much improved system for recycling old tyres. The Molectra process is different for a number of reasons. Firstly, it is a lot cheaper to run because our machines are much more compact in comparison to traditional systems. This in turn reduces energy consumption. The wear and tear on the shredding equipment, which cuts up the tyres, is also reduced, as the tyres fed through them have already been softened. Costs are reduced by over 30% using our system. And, significantly, our machines can handle a tyre of any size, from the smallest bicycle or wheelbarrow right up to the largest earth-moving truck. Most other processes can only handle car tyres. Our technology has proven to work, and we have won many awards, including the Australian Museum's Eureka Award, and last year on a national TV program, we were chosen as the Invention of the Year. Winning that certainly opened many doors for us, with interest coming from 27 countries around the world, including the United States and China. To cope with the demand, we will soon have 10 more factories which will operate 24 hours a day just to stabilise the current stockpile. We are passionate about taking this process further, And so we have chosen to dedicate 5% of every dollar we make to research. In this way, we can ensure we are always the best in the business. So, let's look at the process we use, what we extract from the tyre in each stage of the process, and the uses that those materials can be put to. The first step of the process mechanically extracts the steel wires from the rim of the tyre. This high-quality wire can be cut into small pellets suitable for sandblasting shots. Next, after the tyres have been sliced into a number of segments depending on tyre diameter, they are chemically treated. This chemical treatment is essential as it removes dirt from the rubber prior to the rest of the process. The cleaning process also softens the tyres, making them easier to chop up. In the next stage, the fibre cords contained in the tyre segments are separated from the rubber using rollers. The fibres, which can include nylon and rayon, can be used as a reinforcement for concrete, or they can be used to form plastic panels. Then, the rubber is cut up into very small pieces known as crumb rubber. For a tyre weighing 10 kilograms, Melectra can recover 7.5 kilograms of crumb rubber that can be used to manufacture a range of rubber products, such as asphalt, used in road making. It is also used as insulation in buildings, or something simple like tiles for the floor. Alternatively, any or all of this crumb rubber can continue through to the final stage. This final stage involves our patented Melectra vac machine, which uses industrial microwave energy. This changes the remaining rubber into hydrocarbon, which can be used to make 3 different products. We can cheaply produce activated carbon, which is usually quite expensive to make from new materials. It's used for treating water, as well as being an integral part of air filters. Secondly, as the carbon produced is very pure, in fact it's over 97.4% pure, we can crush it to form something called carbon black, which is used in the manufacture of batteries and also ink. Our process is very flexible, and we can alter the quantity of each of the 3 products depending on demand. Finally, we can even use the hydrocarbon to make oil. And we use this to generate electricity to power our own machines. It certainly helps to keep the costs down. And that's just about it. So if there are any questions...
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4.
What the fuck, tại sao mình ghi là wire 1, 2 2 1 2 này.
That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.
CBA 4 này. AC CD
You have 2 minutes left.
Ok anh em, mình sẽ thêm một cái đề nữa và chắc chắn là cái bàn bây giờ mình sẽ có một lần chuyển bởi vì do lên gang gu li gu quá ta la lên gang gu lên gang ok nha. Tung sao vừa lẹp solitary is man đơn lẻ solitary okay. Làm bắt đầu test nào.
Version 30677. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Part 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a customer and the manager of a house-sitting agency. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, Oz House Sitters. Adam here.
Oh, hello. My husband and I are going on a trip overseas, and we'd like someone to stay in our house and look after it while we're away. Is that something you can help us with?
It most certainly is. We can take care of all the arrangements for you.
Okay, great.
Now, can I just get some contact details from you for the form? Your name is...
Jenny Hall.
Thank you. Now, what's your address?
14 Grey Street.
Is that G-R-E-Y or G-R-A-Y?
A-Y.
Right. And what's the suburb?
Greenfield.
Oh, I know it. And if I can just get a contact telephone number?
I'll give you my mobile number. That's probably the best one to use. It's 0491 577 248.
Thanks. Now, when did you want the house sitter to start?
We're flying out on the 25th of September, but my brother will be in the house for a few days until the 28th. So from the 29th of September, please.
I'll note that down. And how long do you want the house sitter for?
Well, I'll be attending a training course in Paris for 2 weeks, but we're also going to visit my niece in Singapore on the way home to Australia for a few days.
So, shall I put down 3 weeks?
That sounds about right. I think 4 would be too long.
Sure. Now, Jenny, can you tell me more about the features of your house? This helps us to match house sitters and homeowners.
Sure. What do you want to know?
Does the house have air conditioning?
No, we don't like using it. We prefer the fresh air. But last year we did put in a pool.
Very nice. And are there any other attractive features? Is your house near a beach, for example?
No, not really. We're about an hour's drive away. But we are close to a station, so it's handy for anyone getting into work and so on.
Okay, great. Now, if our house sitter has their own transport, is there any space for them to park?
Well, we won't be taking our car, but it's a large double garage. There'll be space for one more.
Okay, great. I'll note that down too.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
And are there any special duties that you'll need the house sitter to carry out?
Oh, I don't know. What do people normally ask for?
Well, for example, one common chore is looking after the garden.
Oh, yes, we have an orange tree and an apple tree, which are both watered automatically, but we haven't connected the sprinkler to our lemon tree yet, so they'll need to water that one.
Sure. Now, Jenny, do you have any special requirements for your house sitter?
Well, I don't know if this is possible, but I'd probably rather have a couple than someone who's single. The house might be a bit too big for just one person.
Sure. Now, many of our owners ask for sitters without children. What's your preference?
Oh, that's no problem. There's nothing they can break.
What about smoking?
Oh, no. I can't stand the smell. Definitely not. Now, how do I know that my house is going to be safe with the house sitters?
Well, we check all of our house sitters very carefully. They have to provide references. But as well as that, you can ask for a police check if you want to.
Oh, yes, I'd like to do that, please.
Okay, no problem. That's all I need for now.
Okay.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a manager talking to staff of a graphic design company about the move to their new office building. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15.
Wait, what? Wait, what? Sao cái này nó quen vậy ta? Cho mà tròn chính tròn đi đồ đi.
Part 2. You will hear part of a radio program in which a successful businessman is advising listeners on how to become a self-made millionaire. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16.
New entrepreneur. Let's see about English. Oh no. Oh no. Em bị lặp rồi. Oh no.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Everybody dreams of becoming a millionaire one day. So we asked Arthur Knowles, who made his millions in the plumbing business, to give the budding entrepreneurs among you a few tips on how to make your first million. Arthur, welcome to the programme.
Thanks, Sue.
So, Arthur, what advice do you have for our listeners?
Well, one thing I've heard people say is that when you're starting up a business, you can't afford to make mistakes. Well, I believe in the old saying, a person who never made a mistake never made anything. You can't really predict when you'll make mistakes, and you have to look at them as a positive experience, and one that means you won't make the same mistake again. You need to be able to cope with the world of business. But according to recent American business school studies, believing in yourself isn't enough by itself to guarantee success. Confidence can be a good thing, but a person can have too much confidence. And people who try to learn to be confident by buying those How to Succeed books are just wasting their time. The advice given in these American studies was that being a successful entrepreneur comes down to having the right attitude. It's no good getting depressed every time something goes wrong. Always keep your goals in mind and never give up. And don't listen to all the people around you who say, oh, this will never work. One thing I've learned in business is that you don't have to be an expert in everything, like marketing, for example. When I started my business, I tried to do it all myself, but I soon realised that although I knew everything there was to know about plumbing, I didn't have much idea about how to sell my ideas. So, I got someone who knew more about this to take care of the marketing side of things for me. And as for leadership, well, you've got to be someone your workers look up to because you've been seen to make the right decisions. You have to be able to control people, but listen to them at the same time. Some people are driven to make their companies successful, but that too often leads to a ruthless approach. Then there's the question of taking risks, even calculated ones. I personally feel it's actually better to tread carefully when it comes to taking short-term risks. You need a degree of vision, certainly, but it's easy to get carried away by your desire to increase profits. And if things go wrong, you can end up losing more than you gain.
Before you hear the rest of the program, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
So, if you have a great idea for a business, what should you do next?
Well, the first thing to ask yourself is whether there's a need for your product or service. Can you cater for people's needs better than existing companies? You don't need to worry about whether it's original or not because there isn't always enough of a demand for completely new ideas. And the second thing to ask yourself is not what colour should the packet be or how much should it cost, but do I care enough about this idea to dedicate the next 10 years of my life to it? Because realistically, that's how long it will take.
Tell us how you got started, Arthur. How do you explain your early success?
Well, I started my business just as the economy was going into a recession, which wasn't the best time, and I was lucky to survive, especially as the banks weren't being particularly supportive to small businesses at that time. If I'd listened to the business advice I was given back then, I'd never have got started. My strengths were that I knew I could provide a better service than my competitors, who really hadn't spotted the opportunities that were out there, and that my wife had a good job and was able to pay the household bills while I was getting the company on its feet. The first couple of years were very tough, but I knew I would make it eventually.
OK, now we're going to take some calls from listeners.
Oh, đây experiment này, steam engine này, máy hơi nước này, wait for cereal, like really you fucking shit man. Alo. Cái gì? À, quên mất đấy, tao quên bảo mật khẩu ấy Chiến ạ. Có gì mày tự đổi nhá. Nghe tao viết là sao Chiến ạ? Mật khẩu này là tất cả mạng xã hội tao Chiến ạ. Mày thích vào Facebook tao mày cứ nhập mật khẩu đấy Chiến. Mày biết số điện thoại tao đấy. Ừ. Cái gì tao không để thế hết Chiến ạ. Mày nhập thoải mái. Hả? Cái gì? Tao gửi trên mét đi. Mày thử gõ từ và password trên Windows ấy xem nó có không. Hoặc là security ấy. Cái gì? Hả? À đúng rồi, mày có cách nào để tắt mấy cái mà
Section 3. You will hear two primary school trainee teachers called Stefan and
ứng dụng nó chạy nhỉ? Lúc mới bật lên nhá.
Đúng rồi.
Mày bấm Ctrl Shift Enter đi.
Có cách nào để tắt mật khẩu không? Nhớ không nhập mật khẩu.
Cái gì?
Có ra tắt mật khẩu không?
Tắt mật khẩu à?
Tao đeo nhập mật khẩu.
Tao như là tắt mật hơi khó ấy. Mày tắt mấy cái app khởi động thì mày bấm vào cái mày nhấn Ctrl Shift Enter đi.
Tao đổi mật khẩu á.
Mày thử bấm Windows R xong rồi mày ghi cái này này. Windows R ấy, bấm Windows R ấy.
Sau đó.
Xong mày gõ cái tao vừa gửi ấy. Xong mày bấm Enter.
Net.
Xong rồi.
Sao nữa?
Xong mày thấy có cái phần gọi là phần password gì không?
Password for à?
Cái gì?
Phần password for ở bên dưới à?
Tao nhớ biết mày thử chia sẻ cam.
Để bật đăng nhập Facebook trên máy tính không?
Mày bấm chia sẻ cam thôi, mày bật cam rồi đúng không? Alo, đây. Kiếp mạng này mày lag thế. Không phải đâu. Từ. Quay lại đi. Chiến nhập ra mày thử properties đi. Properties. Xem mà nó có phần password không? Không á? Không, thế không phải đâu. Mà mày vào advanced đi, advanced. À đâu, từ. Vào advanced. Xong rồi manage password kìa.
Ra cái này, nó ra cái bảng này.
Đâu?
Đây là web.
Mày, tao chả nhìn thấy cả màn hình mày cơ. À thế thì đỡ phải rồi, thế này đỡ phải rồi.
Sao cứ để bên mà khỏi cũng được. Để khỏi thôi để xem tắt cái kia đi rồi gì.
Control Shift Enter.
Shift Enter. Đây. Tôi nhìn lại khác cái trước ấy.
Khác mà. Mày vào cái phần startup ấy, startup ở bên trái. Xong mày disable hết. Chuột phải xong rồi disable hết. Xong rồi. Ok. Bye bye nhé. Có nhiều đứa tải lắm nhưng mà
nó hết slot rồi, hết slot tải đấy.
Hết slot đấy. Hết slot thì có bạn ấy mày từ hả?
Mày mua tao nghe phone mua tao cái Samsung đi.
Mày điên à, kể cả mày mua Samsung thì nó vẫn như thế mà.
Thì tao mua bán tao tải như của mày.
Đâu của tao tải bằng app nội địa cơ. Tao không tải APK.
Mấy con Xiaomi thì mấy con của nội địa Trung Quốc đúng không?
Mua nội địa.
Đúng không? Bye em nhé.
Bye em.
Section 3. You will hear two primary school trainee teachers called Stefan and Magda discussing their placements for science teaching. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26 on page 6.
Condenser, máy làm sữa đặc à? What the fuck? Bone difficult. Specialized cái mình là cần công cụ đặc biệt à? Cho nó đỏ à? Immediate research, kết quả trung bình.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi Magda, how was your placement?
It went really well. The kids really enjoyed the science I did with them.
So did mine. I think they found it very motivating.
Yes, the programme we had to teach was much better than the old-style science experiments we did at school.
Yes, though I don't understand why the children should have to build a model of a steam engine. I tried it with the kids, but I couldn't get it to work.
Me neither. And it really shows it's hard to get any real results.
Yes, and it's usually the children's parents, rather than the kids themselves, who favour that type of experiment. So what experiments did you do?
Well, one day a discussion started in class about breakfast cereals, about which one was best. One child then said that we should test them in class.
That's a nice idea.
Yes, and it wasn't expensive. We brought 4 different brands of cereal and had everyone evaluate them for taste, appearance, and sogginess in milk.
And are you going to tell me which one won?
No, I'll let you do it yourself. It obviously isn't difficult to set up. Another experiment we did, the sports teacher's idea actually, was to spend a morning seeing how high various balls bounced. For example, do new tennis balls bounce higher than old ones? And do basketballs that are fully inflated bounce better than flatter ones?
And I guess you got some interesting data?
We did, and they had to make a chart to plot the results. It really improved their grasp of charts and graphs and calculation. Apparently they'd had problems understanding the point of graphs in the past.
Did all your experiments work out okay?
Well, we had one lesson on making paper from grass. The children made a terrible mess in the classroom. Whatever they did didn't work, and it wasn't because it was difficult. I think it was because it didn't engage them at all. It didn't seem to motivate them.
My tie-dyeing experiment went well. They had to get a piece of material and twist it into a rope and then dye it. The children did end up with blue and green hands for a few days, though.
But don't you need to spend more than one lesson on that?
Yes, we did it over 3 classes. The children really loved it, though, and one suggested we make scarves from the result. I declined, as my sewing skills aren't up to much.
I guess the one experiment that everyone loved in my class was making glue from milk. I thought it would be a complete failure, but in fact it worked brilliantly. One reason, I suspect, is that they got feedback straight away. Some children get really restless if they have to wait for anything interesting to happen.
Yes, I think that's always a good idea. Really helps to make it a success.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30 on page 7. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
I see you've got a diagram there for one of your experiments.
Yes, it was an idea I got from the internet. It was very easy and straightforward to set up. The idea is to make a condenser to extract essences from plants. The large container's made of metal.
Right, and that holds the hot water?
That's right, and it has a strainer which sits inside it. This is where you put the plant matter. We used plants like rosemary, as the essence you can extract is quite strong.
So what's the container right at the top?
It's made of glass. It's where we put the ice. The glass container has a drip tip at the bottom.
What's that for?
It's where the essence collects.
Where does the essence go then?
Into the dish at the bottom. It's made of pottery.
Sounds good. I might try it with my class.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4 on page 8.
Vừa nãy
Part 4. You will hear part of a talk about recent research into the design of workplaces. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Cubicle. Hai lưu vua.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hello everyone. I recently completed some important research into the way office space is designed and its impact on employees. The open plan office had been the norm for offices around the world. I'm sure you can picture one. A big room with maybe 50 or 100 workers sitting at their workstations. You might think open plan designs are a recent phenomenon, but they actually came about in the early 20th century, when businesses needed large numbers of people to do typing. These employees, usually women, used to have to sit in rows working away at their typewriters under the watchful eye of their supervisor. Over the years, designers have come up with several variations on the open theme. In particular, this has been achieved through furnishings. The early designs featured separate desks. A subsequent design introduced the concept of the cubicle. These can have either high screens that workers can't see over, or a screen just low enough to keep a lookout for the manager. And nowadays, with the increase in large call centres, a phenomenon known as hot desking is common. In this system, employees working on different shifts are asked to share the same workstation. As you can imagine, this is not very popular with staff as there is little opportunity to personalise your workspace. In fact, my research shows that employees in general dislike the open plan design. As a part of my research, I conducted a survey of the staff in several large companies with open plan offices. The employees all voiced similar concerns about the design. Firstly, they felt that the open plan took away their privacy, but many also felt the need to carry their valuables with them at all times. So, to some extent, they also felt there was less security with these designs. Another common complaint may be something for employers to consider when choosing this type of design, and this was that these types of office space are bad for the health. I was intrigued by this possibility, but looking at staff records, it does seem to be borne out. So, if this design is so unpopular, why is it so commonplace? Well, the answer to that is in the benefits that the employers feel this type of design has. Of course, there is the obvious benefit that this design significantly reduces costs, both in terms of rent and even in terms of energy use. Employers also argue that an open plan design leads to better teamwork and communication. They also feel that new staff can learn from observing other workers, so this design can actually help in training staff. However, the complaints voiced by employees seem to suggest that the disadvantages far outweigh the advantages. The reality is that unhappy workers are unlikely to work well together, and there is plenty of evidence to suggest workers are frequently distracted from their work by the noise that is all around them. What is clear is that as designers, we need to think carefully about the impact that our design has both on the staff involved and the work that they do.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4.
That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.
Alright guys, I got to play